Hi kids, this is Coach Jim again, part 2 of the tactical or positional topic, what to know. In this part 2 we'll mainly look at positional concepts, and in the beginning here we're going to look at quickly 3 games. We're not going to analyze them really, we're just going to look at the pawn structure. Weak structures and strong structures, just to get an idea of what you want in your position. So let's look at the first position. These games are from local tournaments, and actually all 3 games are the same opponent. The same person is playing, I think, the white side of all 3 games. No, in one game he's black. Anyway, it doesn't matter who it is. So let's check out this structure. Okay, F4 is the bird's opening. It's kind of like if you know anything about openings, D4, F5 is called the Dutch, and totally legitimate opening. So white is just playing it in reverse. So it's okay to play that move. It's a rather somewhat unusual move, but it's okay. So let's see. Okay, right off the bat, black has given himself a hole on E3 where black could conceivably put a piece. Couldn't never be attacked by a pawn. See, that's what a hole is. But white's doing it on purpose because he has a particular pawn structure in mind, as we'll see. And also, it's hard for black to get pieces on E3 anyway, or controlling E3. So let's see how it continues. Okay, this was white's idea, and so black knows that he's never going to get really take control of E4. White can move his knight to D2. He'll be able to chase whatever goes to E4. So black takes here. Okay, so now white has doubled pawns, D3 and D4. Now normally doubled pawns aren't ideal. They're not the greatest pawn structure. However, in this case, they're doing a pretty good job of protecting these squares. Look at these squares. The pawns are protecting those squares right now. So even though they're doubled, they're doing good work. So also, white has an open C file. So another advantage of these doubled pawns. But sometimes the doubled pawns just aren't that great. One problem is the D3 pawn is stuck and can't move. The D4 pawn can't either, actually. So that's the one problem, they're not mobile. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so white is trying to expand in the center, which he does. And white is, this particular player loves to attack. So here come his pawns. Now this type of position where white opens up his own king to attack can be a great attacking idea and win brilliantly, or it can end in total disaster where the open exposed king gets counterattacked. So it can work both ways. So be careful of this particular space grab. Normally acquiring space is a good thing, but here it's very double-edged. So let's see how this one continues. Okay, so white is capturing here to continue the attack, giving himself double isolated pawns, we call these. D3 and D4. Notice the pawns are weak. They can't be protected by other pawns, and they're sitting ducks. If black can withstand the attack, maybe he can pick these pawns off. So in an ending especially, these pawns would be very weak. But white is hoping he doesn't get to an ending. So let's continue. A few more moves. We're not going to play too far into this. Okay, so here, we're going to end it here. The game gets wild and crazy, but the 3 green markers are for isolated pawns, and this e6 square is where this knight wants to go, and will end up in a few moves. And notice the knight on e6 will be participating in the attack against the king. So, yeah, this is a very interesting double-edged position. Both sides have pawn weaknesses, but that generally happens when you have a wild attacking game. So, okay, let's look at the next game. This one here is same player as white, and normally the Caro-Kann is a quiet position. This is the positional way to play it, or even here. Takes. Okay, so the main line of the Caro-Kann, of course, goes like this, but we're not terribly interested in... and sometimes they go here. But, you know. These days, white is playing... Sometimes white castles long, and that used to be fashionable. Now white just likes to castle short and play more positionally. But not white in this case. He plays what's known as the advanced Caro-Kann. And this can get crazy as well. Look at this, g4. It's a blatant attempt to grab space. And white is assuming black is going to castle short. That's the one problem with pushing all these pawns. What if black castles long? You know, then these pawns may be overextended. Already white has a problem. Does he push the pawn to g5 or capture or leave it? Black is undermining this big pawn center. So he decides to take it. Now in this position, after taking, notice black's knight on g8 can go to the f5 square. What a beautiful square. And that's what he notices instantly. That's the square. f5 is a big hole. Can't be attacked by a pawn ever. And knights love those types of squares. Also, the h5 and h2 pawns are isolated, doubled, and even weaker because they're on the h file. Doubled h pawns are always weak. Doubled isolated h pawns. Okay, so this pawn structure is kind of ugly for white, but he does have a space advantage. So let's see what happens in this game. Maybe black can punish white, or maybe white can crash through. Let's see. So now black is actually playing on the other side too. This c5 move is called a pawn break. Pawn breaks for black usually occur c7 to c5 or c6 to c5, or a lot of times the e pawn, e7 e5 or e6 e5 is a standard pawn break for black. So yeah, this is a break, grabbing space on the queen side, hoping to play c4. So let's see how this goes. Yes, he gets c4 in. Now this yellow line here shows a pawn chain. Notice how nice and sturdy that pawn chain is. These pawns all protect each other. The one problem with it might be that they're not that mobile. You know, they're stuck. They can't really move, but they're sure doing a good job of grabbing space and putting up a impenetrable barrier, more or less. So let's see how this goes. Backing white up. Black grabs a pawn. White was planning on giving up that pawn anyway, thinking he could get a counterattack. Maybe rook b1, rook takes b7. Let's see what happens. Yes. Okay, so, but now, the trouble with, he can't grab the pawn, the e3 bishop is hanging, so he has to protect it. And now black does castle long, just in the nick of time. So all of this stuff white has done on the king side is more or less for naught. The pawns are shattered, the g-file's open, and black is probably going to get an attack. Also, this queen on c3 is a problem. And here's the real problem, though. Uh-oh. I pushed the wrong button. Let's get back to the position. Okay, The real problem is this. That bishop is a super bishop along that diagonal. And you're going to see how that bishop, how dangerous that bishop really is here in a second. Okay, so white really has not achieved his objectives of attacking. All he's done is ruin his king position, and black is the one now with the counterattack. So let's see what happens here. So rook here, knight here. Bishop here attacking the rook. Probably the fatal mistake. So knight attacks the queen. Queen has one square. And then the bishop comes in, and ouch. This has gone very wrong for white. It's all because he overextended his pawns on the king side too quickly. And black punished him with his starting with h5, messing up his pawn structure, and then obtaining this huge pawn wall in the center. Pawn chain, f7 to c4. So pawn structure resulted in this rather unfortunate position. He played on, but of course lost horribly. So let's look at the final game for pawn structure. Okay, here we have the opponent that was white in the first two games is now black, and he loves this Dutch stuff, f5 or f4. So I'm showing you this game because I want to show you this pawn structure here. Right here, the yellow squares are what's known as a stonewall formation. It's very strong. It's got holes. You know, there's a big e5 hole. But black can play around that. At least that's the idea. And generally he can. Black actually is eyeing e4, that red square there. The knight goes from f6 to e4 quickly, and it's actually quite hard to get out. The only way to really get it out is to play f3, and that weakens white's king side. So let's see what happens here. Okay, normal development, and black, as planned, plops the knight on e4. And sometimes if you own a square like this, you don't necessarily want to put a piece there all the time. But in this case you do, because white doesn't really want to capture. If white captures, this open f-file, black will get a big attack after he castles, and this knight has to move. This is generally considered good for black, so black is not worried about the capture. So white continues his queenside play. Okay, bishop here. Takes. Now white purposely doubles his pawns, opens his g file. He's doing that because even though he's giving himself these weak f pawns, he's solidifying his control on e5, which is his primary goal here. So black is clearly going to go rook g8 and attack. So white has decided that he will be okay in this position. So now he takes the knight because the knight can possibly participate in the attack. And so now it's extremely double-edged once again. All of these games tend to be. And okay, so this is the final position. We're not going to go any further than this. White has this nice pawn chain. Now it's extending into the queen side. So white's play is on the queen side. These red squares are backward pawns. They're not isolated, but they're backward. So a backward pawn is a weak pawn, can't be protected by another pawn. And this f3 square is a hole. It's a weak square. Black will try to capitalize on that. This e5 square is great square still for white. He owns that square forever, it looks like. So this is, again, a very complicated double-edged game. Black better be careful about the f7 square, close to mate, but he sees it. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this game finishes. But we're just looking at pawn structure now, so no such luck. This is a main line in the Sicilian defense called the Sveshnikov, or Pelican, some people call it. So black has purposely given white this big hole on d5. So this d6 pawn is backward. Okay, so why is black purposely given himself an inferior pawn structure? Well, in chess, a lot of times you give something to get something. In exchange for a fairly bad pawn structure here, black can get quick activity. Also, the knight on b5 can be chased back. And it turns out that this type of structure here, black gets sufficient counterplay for the compromised pawn structure. However, that doesn't mean white doesn't play around that square. Okay, so in this position here, white would really not want a pawn on d5, because then the d6 pawn isn't nearly as weak. White would love to just leave this d5 square open, castle, get his rooks and queen on the d file, and win the d pawn. So in this position here, allowing black to take the knight is not really what he wants to do. So he wants to pin this knight, which is covering the d5 square, and just take it next move. So this knight will live longer, and if black tries to chase the knight out with his other knight or bishop, then he can just back the knight up. We'll see. So bishop here takes, and now the knight is still sitting nicely here. And so this is the new move. They used to play this move, I think, in this stuff. But okay, so let's say he goes here. Okay, so a few moves are made. White still has control of the d5 square, and black has counterplay. It's an interesting position, but white's goal is to okay, so now this position here, black may have misplayed it, but now white has achieved his goal of targeting the d6 pawn, which notice can never be pushed. And that's a positional concept of guarding a square, this d5 square here. And basically white owns the square. Black can't put anything on it. And white will eventually, using some tact, maybe h3, bishop g4, trade the bishops and load up on the d file and win the pawn. Okay, that's one idea. Okay, okay, now we're going to actually look at a real game. One of my students. Okay. And see how he plays positionally. There will be a lot of mistakes in this game, but okay, so if white plays here, of course, it transposes to Sicilian, but white doesn't want that. He's going to play instead what's called the Schmidt-Benoni, a variation of the Benoni. You can get to this by playing d4, c5 on move 1, d4, c5, d5, and some people like to play the knight in front of the pawn. And so let's see how this game goes. Okay, that's a terrible move, blocking. This is anti-positional, blocking the bishop and knight. So white is playing logically, and black just puts his queen back, obviously bad. White continues his development, making all nice developing moves. Alright, this is a positional move too. Remember up here? Look at number 3. principles of positional chess. Restrict your opponent's pieces. Okay, this move here prevents this knight from going g4, or the bishop from going to g4. So it's a good restricting move. Also, if this knight happens to go here, the bishop can back up here. So several reasons why h3 is a good move here. Okay, so rook here. This is another positional idea. Preventing black from expanding on the queen side with a6, b5. Okay, it's very important. Restrict your opponent's movement. And eventually they'll get frustrated and maybe make a bad move. Okay, so black is still going to play knight c7, a6, and play for b5 if he can. Or possibly go knight d4, b4. Okay, so white continues logically developing. Okay, black is finally ready to push. b5. Actually, yeah. Not yet, actually. You may have to go rook b8. But anyway, so white's going to nip that one in the bud by pushing the pawn. So he can now no longer push there, further restricting black's movement. Notice how white's pieces are all well placed. White has a space advantage. The pawn on d5 is really holding black's position back. And black doesn't really have a lot of good plans here. He's running out of ideas. So knight here. And now instead of easing the pressure by trading, white continues to increase his positional advantage. He obviously wants to go to b6. Okay, so here, black plays here, and now white plays back to h2. Okay, so look at this position here. White's ready to play rook a e1, knight b6. White has several different plans he can carry out. He's got a great position, and black has a really hard time finding any plan at all. His movement is highly restricted. So white has come out of the opening with a nice positional advantage. And here, black probably should play this move. And he's just, he's worse, but he's still okay. But he blunders this move. And does everyone see why? Now white can actually cash in here and play here and win the piece, so he does that. Okay, so clearly white's winning here. Alright, and it's all because he made small positional gains, and we reached a point here where black has real difficulties in finding a plan. Okay? So that's a good example of a positional crush. Okay, let's now the rest of these games I'm going to show you are things I've plundered off of Jeremy Silman's site. Some positional ideas of his. I have to give him credit because I took them from him. Okay, so in this position here, it's white's move. What's the situation? Material even? Oh, it looks pretty even, right? White wants to play knight d5 perhaps, but the pawn on b2 hangs. So what would you play as white? Well, notice there's an open b file. Black might want to play rook b8 and apply pressure along the file. So the bishop on f6, applying pressure this way, and the rook. Okay, so that's kind of a weak pawn there. So what can we do about it? A good positional move here would be this. Now white doesn't have to worry about infiltration on the b file or losing his b pawn, and he can now either play knight d5 and force a weakness, like c6 would be a weakening move, because the d6 pawn would then be weak. Or white can play f4, possibly f4, e5 ideas. So white's the one with the advantage and the mobility. Black is kind of in a defensive mode. If knight here, this would be the game continuation. Yeah, this game was from this was one of Alekine's game. Alekine was white, and continued like this. That was a nice move. Infiltrating over there on the weak queen side, and forcing black. Notice the pawn can only be protected by pushing it. Okay, positional advantage gained by forcing him to push the pawn. Now the d6 pawn is weak. Okay, now he forced another weakness on the king side. So we can continue, but notice how white is like poking at black's position, forcing little weaknesses. That's a very important part of positional play, forcing the other side to compromise their position. Okay, let's check out another position. This one's a weird one. I didn't really get this one at first. What should black do here? In fact, let me see if I can flip the board. Yeah, okay. Now you're black, moving up the board. What would be a good continuation here? And it's a very positional idea. If you look at the position for a while, you'll notice black has a weak d6 pawn. The pawns on e4 and c4 are, and this knight also, are restricting this d6 pawn from ever going to d5. And eventually white's going to load up on the d file and probably win the d pawn. So what should black do to counter that? Okay, well, here's one idea, is to take and go here. A very strange looking move. Usually you want to leave your bishop at home in a fianchettoed position. But here the idea is to play here. And now notice black has forcibly taken over the d4 square. And the d6 pawn, though weak, cannot be attacked by anything now. Loading up on the d file doesn't help. Now, it's true, white could eventually move the knight, force this bishop to capture, but then the knight can go to d4, so it's going to be much harder. Also, like rook here, bishop here, knight here. Now the bishop can just go back. And notice how, even though the d pawn is backward forever, going to be mighty hard to win. So that was black's solution in this position to prevent his d pawn from being captured eventually. So the position's probably equal at the end of that, but at least black isn't losing. Okay, let's look at position 3. Okay, here's another position. It's white's move. Size things up, equal material. This is a game between Alexander Belyatsky and Artur Yusupov. And so what would white play here? Notice this knight, black's knight wants to go to c4 in a big way. So, and the c6 pawn is weak, so it would behoove white to prevent the knight from staying on c4 so he can attack the c6 pawn along the c file. So what did Bayatsky play here? To stop the knight, well, the knight can't be stopped from coming to c4, but what's a good way to make sure it doesn't stick around? So you could play a couple moves. You could play knight d2, but the problem with that is this knight is already beautifully placed looking at e5. And we don't really want to move that knight. What about the other knight? How about a knight move there? And yes, that's the answer. Knight here is the correct move. And the game continued here, here. Now if the knight comes here, we can just chase it away. And we're going to be able to work on the weak pawn. Okay, so let's say takes. I guess we could take this way. Okay, so white clearly has a positional advantage. He'll be able to load up, and the a pawn and c6 pawn are both weak. White doesn't really have any weaknesses that can be exploited. So it all starts with knight b1, and rook a2 is good because the rook can come to c2. Yeah, so the game continuation was this. Yeah, so if black plays here, white can just do stuff like that. Okay. Finally, we're going to look at a game where you can go either way, positionally or tactically, aggressively. And so let's look at this game here. This one's interesting. I've actually played both ways on this one. This is a standard Queen's Gambit declined with Bishop g5. Now, you can take, you don't have to take, you can back up. This is a positional way to play it. Castles, knight here. You know, moves like this. And black can play here, here, here. Okay, so black has several moves. These are all, this is a slow positional way to play it. Or white can play it a different way. He can capture and play here. And if black castles, white can play either positionally, like here, let's say, or he can play like this game between Mamedyarov and Wesley So in the Blitz match. They played this position several times, actually. So this is the wild and crazy way to play it. H4, G4. And this game, okay, now it's hard for black has to figure out how to not get mated. This is crazy chess. Okay, so as you can see, this is a wild tactical way to play it, as opposed to the quiet positional way. So, and it depends on style. Either way is okay. Okay, so we didn't cover everything that has to do with positional chess. For example, acquiring space is a good thing, and a positional concept. And there are, of course, many pawn formations we didn't have a chance to look at. But at least we looked at some basic positional ideas, various tactical concepts, and other moves that aren't in either of those categories. One final thing to think about. Positional chess is only really possible after you are able to play entire games without hanging stuff. Pieces, even pawns. So start paying close attention to your opponent's ideas, and you will be much more likely to play solid positional moves, from which tactics will naturally appear as if by magic. So, good luck. Hope to see you all soon.